We are a bi-coastal private practice. We offer psychotherapy for adults, couples, children's, teens, families. We have offices in New York, in downtown Manhattan, and in San Francisco and Palo Alto. Alysha is based in, she takes New York clients, and Ashley is based in San Francisco. We currently see clients virtually and in person at all locations, and we see clients with, you know, from topics ranging from anxiety, grief, loss, depression, trauma, recovery, eating disorders, body image, career changes, transitions. Really, it runs the gamut. This community support series really started during COVID when we found that a lot of people were looking for extra support. So we've been doing this free session, trying to do it every month. We've taken some breaks, but it's always nice when we do them consistently. And the theme is really something that the therapists feel passionate about and something that they are an expert in. And so this is a topic that is very close to Ashley and Alysha, and they're really experts on this. And I think that they have a lot of clients who seek support in this topic. So Alysha is our assistant clinical director, and she's an LCSW therapist. She focuses on love, dating, relationships, career transitions, depression, anger, interpersonal conflict. She really handles a lot of projects at the practice, and we really can't run our practice without Alysha. Same with Ashley. Ashley runs a lot of the behind the scenes and even in the front scenes, things going on at the San Francisco office. She works with clients who suffer from depression, anxiety, unhealthy relationships, transitions in life, school, career changes. And actually, Ashley also provides support in Spanish and Portuguese, which is amazing. Let me just admit this person in. And Amy is a partner and friend of ours who we've been working closely with for several years. She has a coaching practice, and she coaches, her coaching services a wide spectrum of personal and professional challenges. She provides coaching for individuals seeking personal growth, career coaching for professional development, layoff support for those navigating job transitions, and also time management strategies to enhance productivity. So she's like a real great partner to join us for this presentation. And I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to Alysha. Just one more note. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll get to them toward the end. And I will be recording it and I will send out the recording tomorrow. So if you have friends or family you'd like to share this with, you will definitely expect it. You should expect it tomorrow in your email boxes. So without further ado, we'll share share it with Alysha.
Hi, everyone. Ashley, yes. So just to reiterate what Daniela said, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. Also, if you're comfortable throughout the presentation, there are some questions that pop up for some, for you to think about throughout the presentation. So if you like, you can put your answers in the chat if you're comfortable as well for a little interaction. If you are not comfortable doing that, that is okay. We do recommend also having a space to take notes because it can be good to come back to after the presentation on your own. And just a little bit about the presentation. Ashley and I, in the first part, will be focusing on the mental health impact of job loss and sharing useful skills and ways to care for yourself. And then during the second part of the presentation, Amy will focus more on job search and career strategies, and specifically on practical tools and next steps in the search. So we wanted to start just by providing a few statistics, and these statistics are pretty, not surprising, but pretty impactful. So as you can see, a quarter of employees view their job as the number one stressor in their lives. Nearly 3 in 5 employees reported negative impacts of work-related stress. Over 761,000 US workers were laid off over the year 2024, and 80% of the American workforce fears for their jobs amid looming recession and layoffs. So these statistics are all within the last data from the last 2 years or so. So this is all recent. So we wanted to start with understanding self-worth. So it's really important to understand what self-worth is and then how it can be impacted. So our self-worth can often be defined as respect and value that you hold for yourself. So job loss and uncertainty can negatively impact how you perceive yourself and your abilities, specifically your identity surrounding your work. So negative self-worth can lead to other issues and concerns. And by cultivating a healthy sense of self, you can positively impact your overall well-being and maintain a richer sense of self. So with identity, we hold different parts of ourselves. There are many different parts of our identity. There's, for example, career, cultural identity, gender, personality, etc. And how these parts are impacted can vary throughout someone's life, depending on what is going on. So it can also shift from one situation to the next. An example of how your identity might do this is, I might see myself as funny and charismatic amongst my friends, but I am more serious in front of my coworkers. And so that is how that part of my identity might shift. And the role of job loss and uncertainty when it comes to your self-worth can lead to other issues and concerns, such as financial strain, loss of routine, relationship stressors, which we will talk about later, the psychological impact, including mental health issues, depression, anxiety, and social stigma. For example, if you recently lost your job and you go to an event with friends where everyone is asking about your career, you might feel more insecure due to the response and social stigmas that often come when you have to share a recent loss. And then the impact on well-being. So you can see how these previous examples could then have an impact on well-being. When your confidence is lower, you may doubt your abilities, engage in truth-seeking behaviors where you focus more on those things that you're not doing well and information that leads you to believe that's right, which can in turn make us doubt what we are capable of, and settling for something that you do not want or is less challenging because you do not feel you're capable. This can lead to lower motivation and continued feelings of self-doubt. When you feel more confident in a situation, you're more likely to believe in yourself and your abilities to persist in the face of a setback. So for example, if you're working on a project and you're getting a lot of positive feedback, you're more likely to feel confident that you'll figure out the problem. Where if you're getting a lot of negative feedback, you're more likely to feel that you will not be able to finish or focus mostly on what is going wrong, and this will impact your self-esteem. And so then how do we engage during difficult time to enhance your overall self-worth? So we came up with what we like to call the 4 S's to higher self-worth. And they are self-care, self-compassion, seeking support, and sharing your experience. So we feel that these 4 S's are ways that you can enhance your overall self-worth. So self-care, some examples of questions you could ask is, what do you do for yourself? How do you practice self-care? Some examples might be exercise, reading a book, going for a walk. Self-compassion, how do you define yourself outside of your job? How do you perceive yourself outside of the stressors in this current situation? Seeking support, do you need to talk to someone, a professional or a personal support? And then sharing your experience. Have you been surrounding yourself with people that understand what you're going through? Are you connected to a community who can empathize with what's with your situation? Next, Ashley.
Sorry about that, the delay. Thanks, Alysha. So in addition to that overview, we're now going to move into the impact that a career or professional predicament can have on the self, and then later on relationships around you. So I want to start on the self by discussing personal values. Sometimes professional choices we make can conflict with our personal value system. Aligning these can help us gain confidence in the decisions that we make and support our well-being at work, ultimately improving sense of purpose. So although aligning our personal value system with our professional choices is ideal, we know that sometimes it's not always possible because of life circumstances, our current economy, the market, personal choices, home life, family, and then any other, financial priorities or other things that have come up. But at least taking a look at what we need coming into the present can help us begin to understand what we might need to shift. Here are some examples of questions that you could ask yourself about what is important to you. So you might not know the answer to these immediately, so we encourage you to jot these down in a notebook that you might have or tablet that you're taking notes in. If you have answers or commentary, please feel free to drop that in the chat. Where do you feel most connected to your authentic self? What do you value most about the workplace or the work that you do? How do you associate with money, income, family, success? What is your biggest priority among these? What can you shift to help you align with these values? And ultimately, what needs to take priority and how do you set check-ins with yourself to work towards a bigger goal here? Sorry about that. When our personal and professional values don't align, it can be helpful to think about what you may need to change, as we talked about. And I want to share a couple of examples that might bring to light a little bit more what we're talking about. So, for example, right now, your biggest thought might be that you need to secure employment in a place that aligns with your skills, the industry that can financially get you back on track, even if that means you work for hopefully not the worst company that you can think of, but maybe. And then that's more of a short-term goal. And then once you get that settled, there's an opportunity to make another plan and to continue towards the path of aligning with your values. So what's your plan to start looking and exploring at a different career, taking some trainings, going back to school, and making space to continue that conversation? Making space for this connection in our values leads to a more fulfilling experience. And we know that when we feel purpose in our work, we're often happier. This is a dance or it's a back and forth, but we know that chipping away at this exploration and goal setting is something that takes time. And you don't have to do it alone. So these are topics that you can share with your therapist, your career coach, as you'll see in this presentation, your partner, friends, family, maybe, or even some experiences might be for journaling or a meditative experience. So finding space, outlets to reflect on these values can be really cathartic and insightful.
So we wanted to include this slide of the impact on relationships, as although it is individual when you lose a job, it impacts so much more than the person themselves. And this isn't just a partner. This could be a friendship. It could be family relationships, former coworkers. So we just wanted to add this slide as a way of normalizing how difficult it can be on relationships, but also how resilient relationships can be with the right communication and with the right supports within those relationships. So we just added a few examples. There's definitely many more, but the financial implications, the burden, the resentment, either the person who is still working or the financial implication that comes with a partner not working, different expectations in a relationship, whether it's changing roles. Maybe the person who is now no longer working is taking on more of the childcare, and that was something they weren't used to. Different friend dynamics, how can you show up for your friends who are in a routine or who have other things going on? It might feel harder. There could be more isolation, difficulty managing a routine, or keeping motivation. But then there are also many things that can be really protective and lead to resiliency in a relationship. How are you working as a team? Are you talking to your support network? Have you established or can you establish good communication? So by having check-ins with a partner or friends from time to time to let them know what is going on, or asking them for certain supports, or even maybe that communication includes setting boundaries. And then also trying to maintain a routine for yourself, both physical and emotional. So whether it's getting outside every day, having your career coach appointments or your therapy appointments, and checking in with yourself. Okay. And speaking of checking in with yourself, another component of exploring your experience during a difficult time is to identify and understand that connection between your mind and body. So it's important to check in, both emotionally and physically, to learn more about what you need. The mind and body are very connected, but often we don't quite understand what is happening. And so the more in tune you are, the better you are to understand what you need next. So for example, you might ask yourself like how you're engaging in this presentation. Are you thinking like negative thoughts about yourself that you have to be here? Or should I have worked harder after you get let go? How are you sitting? Are you hunched over on the couch? What do you notice about your physical and your physical presentation and your emotional presentation? And by asking yourself some of these helpful questions, you can better see that connection and identify what it is that you need and check in with yourself.
Am I muted? No, I'm unmuted. Great. Thanks, Alysha. The tech problems that keep us on our toes. So what came up for you when answering the questions that Alysha just asked? I'm seeing maybe have, oh, will the slides be available after the meeting? Daniela, is that a question you can answer right now?
Yeah, we can share the PowerPoint in the email with the recording.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, what came up when answering some of the questions that Alysha just asked? You might recognize, and it might be really logical and say like, yeah, I have motivation. I know that I need to get over this hump. I know I got to get it together, and still notice that you feel overwhelmed, paralyzed, scared, confused, angry, etc. This actually might be the more intense thing that you feel in your body, or that your thoughts and feelings are responding to despite what you logically know. We're programmed for rigid thinking in times of stress and threat. We can think more clearly in absolutes. This helps us make quicker decisions to protect ourselves in times of imminent danger. So it makes a lot of sense that it might be hard to find your way out of rigid negative thoughts and feelings when all your body can feel is danger and threat of uncertainty. This might be what's happening if you've experienced a job layoff, a termination, psychologically unsafe workspace, or just mere confusion of where you're at in your career or your role, or just what's happening right now in the world. Now, I do not ever want to minimize that what anyone is going through right now, the impact that any of these things have on our financial responsibility, on our family, our identity. Our intention is that even though things feel really despairing, or they can feel despairing, that we can find glimmers of hope and relief that help us move through these really hard chapters into places where we feel more agency. I don't know if anyone has heard this saying, our brain grows off of what we feed it. It just takes skill and building to lean into these parts of our situations that we aren't really programmed for. So, how do we find a more positive perspective or a more helpful way of thinking about things? Two things can be true at once, and that's essentially what I'm getting at in the first couple of lines on this slide. This is called duality, or the dialectic thinking. Naturally, it's hard to hold two conflicting things, as we notice. Like, I logically know I have to move through something, and I feel so paralyzed. It feels impossible to find hope while we're feeling let down, defeated, or disconnected, because we have wiring to pay attention to our negative thoughts and feelings. So I want you to just really quickly, and again, these are exercises that take some time, but just to get familiar with this, the dialectic, a way to practice that is to notice two feelings at once. You can name the feeling, and if you only seem to be naming the negative feeling, I always tell people to kind of like challenge that. So if you're feeling really upset and mad, I want you to find one thing that makes you happy. Notice how different they can be, and then remaining neutral. So kind of zooming out and like thinking about just being an observer and saying like, oh, this really not great thing is happening and this okay thing is happening. Remaining neutral is the really hard part here. Remaining neutral takes time, skill, and lots of trial and error to resist the really judgy thoughts. The idea behind neutrality is to activate regulation and self-soothing so that you can access more stable, clearer decision-making skills. So by zooming out of things, we actually notice our bodies kind of loosening, and that starts to let our system know that we can think more clearly. We can do this through, like I said, zooming out. Some other examples are breathing through non-judgmental thoughts. Quick shout out to one of our somatic therapists, Christina Miller-Martinez, who just did a breathwork workshop, and she has a lot of ways to practice breathing as a self-regulation technique. Some other examples are walking with meditation, movement, talking to a friend to get a different point of view, or other things that just help take judgment away from your thoughts and feelings and allow you to be more of an observer. Judgments are really shaming, and thus activating. So when we can soothe and get regulated via neutrality and non-judgment, we actually can think more clearly about what might be the most helpful next step. Which leads us naturally into tolerating the unknown, actually. So I want to share with you some concepts that you can use to feel more empowered, even when there are tough things that we just can't avoid. Sometimes coming into that neutral place is recognizing the uncertainty that you're faced with. Distress tolerance is the ability to perceive the environment as it is without demanding that it be different. Sometimes things are just hard or painful, and we can move through them. This is where I say that I don't have a recipe to avoid pain, but what we do know is that we can find ways to minimize suffering. I joke that these are the only two math equations that you're going to see from me. So pain plus non-acceptance equals suffering, and pain plus acceptance equals ordinary pain. You're like, wow, Ashley, ordinary pain feels so much better. What a relief you're giving me. But here I go. Here's the thing. Some stuff is inevitable and we don't have control over situations. So if we can learn to work with what's in front of us and essentially accept what we have, we're more likely to move through things rather than resisting our reality, which only actually gets us even more stuck. So what I mean by this is, how do we accept what we've been dealt rather than resisting it, which has us suffering more. In the slide, you'll see that we have a rest technique. We don't have time to go through that exercise today, but in the email, the follow-up email that we send with this deck, Alysha and I have actually put together a sort of study guide, and we provide some exercises, and the rest technique is in there. So we invite you to explore that study guide and use some of the exercises to soothe and learn to tolerate what you might be going through. So with that being said, Alysha and I, that wraps up our part around social emotional self-care. We're going to switch gears from discussing that perspective to practical next steps you can take for from a career coach's perspective. I'd like to hand it to Amy Bloustine, as you know, a seasoned career coach and author. We're so happy to have you join us, and I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to be here because it's such a great opportunity. It's been so great to collaborate with Alysha and Ashli on this. And guys, it's such a great job to set this up because there's so much that goes into, it's not just you've lost your job, then you move on and you find a job the next day. There's so much more about processing the experience. It's, when we're laid off, it's a daunting experience. It can be incredibly overwhelming, traumatizing for some. So what I want to be able to do with this is to give you some practical, immediate next steps to help you move forward with this. I appreciate what you both said about you have to take care of the mind and the body to be able to go through this process. So the first part with this is, the automatic response, and I get this. I was laid off in 2013, so I understand both sides of what this experience is, from being laid off to working with clients for the past 10 years. Our immediate response is to panic, but don't panic. I know that's easier said than done. Be able to breathe. You both talked about the breath work and how important that is as we navigate through this process. Feeling your emotions through this, because there's a ton of emotions that will come into play, and navigate it. The rest and recovery. I don't think people realize how important that component is when you're going through this. And I tell clients all the time, they will tell me, I'm so exhausted. I can't, there's a sense of relief for a lot of people when they get laid off because there's so much that's around it. So give yourself that time to rest and recover. And most importantly, be kind to yourself. So those are some of those immediate steps. The next part of this is give yourself some time. I know every situation is different. Everybody has their own version of what the layoff experience is about. Your version is yours, and there's no judgment around it. Everybody will navigate it through a different timeline. Do what's right for you. Identifying your support system, and you both mentioned this, and it's so important. Find your community. Do not do this, and I'm kind of skipping, but don't do this alone, and you don't have to. Talk with people, talk to your family members. Sometimes the immediate response when this happens is, I can't tell anybody, because there's so much shame, guilt, and judgment that we impose on ourselves when we go through a layoff. When that happens, think about community, especially if you've gone through, there's so many different versions of how layoffs are taking place. Find the people that, if it's been mass layoffs or whatever, talk to people. Your therapist, I'm just reiterating this, but your therapist, a coach, family, whoever you can find. But don't do this alone. I really want to keep stressing that because it's really important. Next slide, please. Okay. So there's so much that goes on in our mind when this happens, and there's so many emotions that get into play. And I always tell people, this is not the time that this happens and the next day you start job searching. You need that clarity to start figuring out what this looks like. So take that time to figure out what it looks like. Even if it's just, you need a couple of days just to be in the moment of it, feel it, as we say. Once you have that clarity, then you could start moving forward. Because if you don't have clarity around this, you're not going to be able to do a successful job search. There's going to be too many things that get in the way of this. You want to be really clear thinking. This is your time to really start thinking about, what is it that you want to do? What might be different for you? Creating your job search materials. This is where, if there's a group that you can find, or I'm going to tout myself, a career coach, it doesn't have to be me, but somebody, work with somebody that can help you create your job search materials. Here's kind of some of the realities that we're feeling lately. There's a lot of mass layoffs that are taking place, and there are a lot more people that are applying for jobs. So set yourself up for success with this by having your materials done. That means, your resume, that means your LinkedIn profile, your 2-minute pitch, a cover letter, developing a networking plan. All these things, you want to be incredibly strategic about this. You want to think about, all right, how do you position yourself so that, number one, you're clear on the roles and the responsibilities, or not the roles, but the roles in the industries that you want to go into. You're clear on how to articulate what you want to do. People will help you. I hear this from clients so often that they say, I'm not good at asking for help. Well, this is the best time to do this. And people will help you. Think about this way. If somebody reaches out to you and asks you for help, what are you going to do? You're going to help them. If you can't help them, you're going to direct them someplace to somebody who might, or resources that might be available. But don't do this alone. So it's getting clear on what your targets are, meaning the roles that you're interested in, the industries that you're interested. Great thing, you don't have to have just one. Then creating your materials that align with, and Ashli, I think you talked about this, your core values. That's incredibly important to know what those are. The other thing that's important around this too is understanding what are your skills, what are your offerings, because that's what you have to articulate. Thinking about what sets you apart from other candidates, because there's a lot more candidates out there. So it's thinking about what sets you apart that way. And one thing I will say, if you're working with a career coach, they're going to be able to give you the tools and the resources, and we'll talk about this in the next slide, to get through what we call the ATS system if you're applying online. All these different things. I know this is a lot of information at once, but you can break this up into steps to do this. But most important is you got to be clear in order to do this. Once you do that, you can create your job search campaign in a very strategic way. You want to have direction. I have clients tell me all the time that when we start talking or working together, they say, I need structure. I need accountability. This is a great way to build all of this in there. Once you're doing that and you have all this worked out, then you can determine your path forward and what your timeline looks like. For some people, there is some urgency to find that job. Everybody's situation is different. Everybody's finances are different, resources, community. Figure out your version of it, but set that timeline up so that you have something that you're working towards. These are really actionable steps that will keep you on target. Next slide, please. Okay. So this is where we put this into action. As I was saying, that the structure, the accountability, the daily goals, and I think, I can't remember, Ashli or Alysha, which one of you talked about having a routine. That's so incredibly important with this, because your world gets rocked. The reality is your world gets rocked when you get laid off. Your entire day changes, your purpose, your focus. So when you have that routine, and then you set your goals, that will put you in place with this. Figure out what's going to work for you. What, again, aligns with your core values, taking care of your well-being, taking, that self-care is so incredibly important with this part. The biggest thing that I want you all, one of the biggest things is about networking. This is the best way for you to find a job. Reality is 80% of people find their jobs through networking. About 10% will find their jobs through job boards. Another 10% will find through recruiters. So think about, it's getting organized. It's knowing who your contacts are, who's in your network. Then thinking about, okay, I want to reach out to them, but I want to do it in a strategic way. So again, you're doing it step by step. Know who your contacts are. I have people tell me all the time, I hate networking. So let's change what it looks like. Instead of networking, we're relationship building. We're just having conversations with people. And again, I know it's hard to reach out to people to ask for help, but we're all willing to do that. And, it's one of those things that if they're going to help you, figure out what can you do to help them, make it reciprocal, but have those conversations. This is your community. Reach out to them. Applying for jobs. So this is a big thing a big takeaway from this. Once you get your materials together, or even before that, once you're very clear on what you want to do, you have your materials together, because of the number of people who are applying for jobs and people that apply online, you want to figure out how to get through what's called the applicant tracking system. And I'm not going to go into too much detail, but the big takeaway with this is about customizing your resume and your cover letter to get through a system so somebody actually gets hold of your resume. And you have to hit, and this is based on the job description and the keywords that they're looking for. So the recommendation I would say, if you are actively job searching, is to sign up for what's called Job Scan, because this is the way that you can compare your resume to the job description. It's going to give you keywords. You can then therefore customize a resume and a cover letter. Why this is so important? Because so many people are applying. Most job seekers don't know about this, and they don't know how to customize. And I feel so bad because I see on LinkedIn all the time where people write, I've submitted 250 resumes. I'm not getting a response. And it breaks my heart because I want to reach out to them and say, are you customizing your resume and your cover letter? Because that's what's so important with this. So think of it this way. This sets you above or ahead of other job seekers because most people don't know about this. And again, happy to answer questions around this and give you more information, but that's just something to really think about with this. You want to be proactive. You want to stay motivated. That's why having community, but you don't want to, this is what I tell people, if you are job searching, you don't have a job, you want to spend about 35 hours a week with your job search. If you are currently employed and you're seeking new employment, it's 10 to 15 hours a week. And you're thinking, oh my God, I have a full-time job, I have family, and I have to do this. It is a lot of work, but if you're not working in your job searching, that becomes your job. But you want to build in, both of the ladies said this, routine is important, but, exercise, getting out of your apartment, staying in community, talking with people, going to networking events, all those different things. But what I want to say is really important, break this up into micro steps. Don't think that you have to do it all at once because you want to manage your expectations around it. The other part to this is stay organized and strategic. Build that structure in. What is your day going to look like? Think about what tools and resources are accessible to you for this process, meaning to-do lists, calendars, meetings, because there's a lot of moving parts to it. But if you do it step by step, kind of that A to Z for the whole process, then it may not be as overwhelming for that. So, and you're going to also receive, I'm going to send you guys, or Danielle is going to do it, a resource page that has immediate steps that have a little bit more detail and more steps with this. I wish we could go into more, but we want to give you a taste tonight of what this looks like. And I could talk on and on about it, but these are the basics for you. And if you have any questions about it, please put it in the chat box. Thank you. Okay, I think this is me, I'm starting this. Okay, we want to be able to tell you the distinction between therapy and coaching, and what are the differences. And it's a great opportunity. I have a lot of clients that I work with that work with therapists as well. Sometimes we all work together. It's a great support system, but understanding what both of us do is really important. So for career coaching, I get to help you get clear on your present and future career path. If you've been laid off, this is an opportunity to seek maybe something new and different. Teach you how to have a strategic and successful job search campaign. You just heard some of the steps that go into this. Develop job search materials to apply for your job search. We just went over those. And to provide support, encouragement, tools, and resources all along the way. So that's what my part is. They're going to tell you now what they do.
It can be so intertwined, and there can be space for so much overlap. That what we want you to take away is that, as Amy has mentioned, a lot of really practical, actionable steps, where therapy can be a different kind of resources when you're feeling like you're trying to do the practical steps, you're trying to do, like we've mentioned, the things that you should be doing, but you still feel stuck. There's something deeper or something that's just not allowing you to keep moving. So processing experiences that have impacted the way you're navigating your career. We're talking about early experiences. We're talking about the experience that you just had in your layoff, definitions of success, pressures that we inherently have, all contribute to how we take these pivotal moments in our lives. So unpacking that and making sense of it can be really relieving and allow you to notice like, oh yeah, I have this giant fear and I don't want to go talk to people about this. And so making sense of that can actually be really freeing. Um, as we've talked about, Alysha and I in this deck, implementing self-care and coping skills to manage emotional responses. It can be really helpful to link feelings and thoughts and implement new behaviors to hopefully shift those feelings and thoughts that are really unhelpful. Identifying strengths and areas of self-doubt to better understand how you show up in the world. This goes back to the slide on stuckness, right? Like what you can get to a certain part and then you kind of get stuck or you feel like you can't move forward. Something is getting in the way. And identifying doubt in that and ways to find strength can be really freeing. And then it's a safe and confidential space to explore thoughts and feelings. That might be one of the most important parts in therapy is that while there are limits to confidentiality, mostly everything is confidential. And so it can be a place to share things that you might not have talked with people about or that you have been thinking about and feels really scary to share with others. The idea is to provide an unbiased, supportive, validating space for you to explore those feelings. So if you're unsure, reach out. We'll happily help you figure it out and point you in the direction that feels that might be the most supportive for you.
Then we just wanted to provide a few resources. I know throughout the deck, Amy mentioned that you'll be receiving some information from her, from Daniela. Ashli and I created a resource guide with breathing exercises and different tools to support you as well. And then these are just some books. And we've also included Amy's book coming soon, From Laid Off to Liberated, and then a few workbooks as well, if you like, to be more interactive. And yeah, that's it. And now questions. If anyone has questions, please feel free to share.
We got a question in. I'll go ahead and read it. That was sent over. Someone's asking, sorry, let me pull it up here. What is a good way to respond to others who continually ask how the job search is going?
Good question.
Happy to start that one if you want.
Sure. Go for it.
There's two ways that this gets approached because family is always going to ask you. A couple of things that they'll do is they'll monitor what your day-to-day is and think, okay, you need to be searching nonstop. And people will ask, what are you doing right now? Think about what your narrative is. It could be as simple as, hey, I'm exploring my next opportunities to see what happens. You could keep it that simple. If you're comfortable with the person, you could go into a little bit more detail, but find your comfort spot with this. It's different when it's in your networking, that type of thing, and they ask what your job search status is. But again, it can be just as simple as exploring my next opportunity. But going through the process, and that's it.
Yeah, I think.
Oh,
sorry, Alysha, do you want to take?
No, go ahead. You can take it.
I say it's. I think as a therapist, we might say the same thing, and this is where we might also assert that like you get to decide how much you share. You get to decide what feels comfortable. I think a practical skill here can be to kind of think about your script that you might use. So if you are going somewhere where you think you might be asked and it's really an impersonal experience, think of a script that you might give, like Amy mentioned. If you're in a place that's a bit more intimate and you're okay sharing a bit more, go for it. But know that you get to decide, and it's not a testament to where you are in your journey. It's actually a testament to how regulated you want to stay in that situation. Daniela, any more questions?
Yeah, we had Oh, let's go ahead and get this one in from Evo. Am I saying your name right? Evo? Um, what are some suggestions around overcoming imposter syndrome?
Yeah,
Yeah, you can go, Amy. It's fine.
yeah, this comes up all the time when people are in that process of job searching, because when people get laid off, their first question is, what did I do wrong? This is usually their default. This is something I should have said earlier. If you've been laid off and it is the choice of the company and it's not performance based, that's the fault of the company and the decisions that they've made. So please remember that, because I remember the day I was laid off, everything went through my mind of, what did I do wrong? Did I not perform well? What did I miss here? This is an automatic response with this. So that's why I think it's important when you're going through this process, get in touch with what your hard and your soft skills. What value do you bring? Because when that pops up, that imposter syndrome, it's thinking, and they'll get more technical with this, but it's how much of it's based in reality and what's supporting those thoughts. Did you get a bad performance review? Did, your boss say something to you, something around that? But this is regular. I mean, I can tell you a couple of weeks ago, I went through it. It's something that pops up in different forms, but when you're laid off, it really comes up more because you're questioning everything about yourself. And that's important to review it, but and I'm going to use what you guys had, Ashley and Alysha, don't get stuck in it. Recognize it and move through it, because there's so many other components to this that are so important as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I would again reiterate all of that. And I would also add the importance of acknowledging it first, right? Yes, it's important to focus on the facts, like those hard and soft skills and how you can move forward. But by focusing first on what it is you're feeling, again, going back to that physical and that mind-body connection, what are you noticing about what's coming up for you in your body when you're thinking about some of those things, and acknowledging it and then moving into the next steps.
We have another great question here. What steps can I take to transition to a new career or industry?
That's,
That's in your wheelhouse,
yeah,
Amy.
that's what it's a great question, because this is the opportunity when you're in this career transition, even if you're not laid off and you're just thinking about this. A lot of people have the assumption that you have to go through training, you have to have an education behind it, that type of thing. There's a component that's going on right now in companies that they're looking for called upskilling and reskilling. And upskilling is thinking about, all right, if you want to make a change, you want to go into a different industry, and this is part of your targeting, do your research, find out, okay, what's the function of these roles? What are the different, roles that fall under it, and what are the skills that are required? Because what this process is, it's about identifying how your skill set is translatable and transferable. I have clients all the time that are moving from different sectors and different roles, but the first thing that we do, one of the first things, is to look at what is their skill set, so they could start envisioning themselves in other roles. Part of that is reading. You got to do your targeting first, but reading different job descriptions and thinking about what their roles and responsibilities are, and writing next to it examples of, oh, I've done this that's relevant to this. You'd be surprised how much is translatable and transferable. Now, if you want to go from being a dentist to trying to think of, working on the stock market, those are very different skill sets. It's not saying that you can't do it, but just manage your expectations around what that looks like. But there's phenomenal resources, online classes, all those different things. AI is a big component right now that companies are looking at. They want to know, how are you incorporating that into your job? Those types of things. So this is so doable, but it's getting in touch with your hard and soft skills, knowing what roles you're interested in and your industries. I spend a lot of time with clients to break that down, because once you identify that, then you could create your job materials around it.
We have another one here. How do I get comfortable with asking for help?
Yes, sometimes it's being comfortable, being uncomfortable. that's often what I share with clients all the time is, you might not feel comfortable, and that is okay. Asking for help can be really, really hard. And so maybe it's starting by, speaking or practicing, that script again, or speaking with someone that you really trust before, reaching out to someone on LinkedIn or somewhere else to ask for help. But it's okay to be uncomfortable. Again, it comes back to that mind-body connection. What are you noticing about the discomfort? Are you feeling uncomfortable when you ask, and then after you ask, it feels alleviating? So sometimes it's letting go of feeling comfortable, as hard as that is.
If I can add to that as well, it's exactly what she was saying. But when I work with clients, when you're clear on what you want to do, your industries, your skills, because the first thing people are going to say, what do you want to do? If you can't articulate that to them, they're going to have a harder time helping you. So when you have that figured out, and then I work with clients to develop a 2-minute pitch, then you're able to clearly articulate what it is that you want to do. It's that narrative that they were talking about, that you're communicating it, but it also gives you confidence because you're really clear on your data points of what you're communicating. And again, I'm going to go back to, yeah, and Ashli or Alysha, you said it perfectly. You have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, but it's one of those things. If people reached out to you, you'd help them. And this is a time where everybody really wants to help each other. So I kind of tell clients with grace and kindness, you just kind of have to do it. And at the end of the day, it's just a conversation that you're having with somebody and you're exchanging information. That's it.
I love what the two of you said, and I'm going to add one tidbit because I wouldn't say anything differently. What do you have to lose?
Exactly.
I think that's a really hard question, and this is where maybe like therapy is a good place to explore that if that question feels really hard. But what do you have to lose compared to what you have to gain? And the compassionate lens, to Amy's point of, I think people are more willing to help than not. And if they're not or they can't, then that might not be your person, but it doesn't mean that there isn't somebody else there. Yeah, asking for help is hard. I think we live in a culture where we have to have like tough skin and feel really powerful in not asking for help. But I think someone said in the comment box, asking for help is an incredible strength. It's, speaking of those transferable skills, it's collaboration, right? It shows teamwork. It actually shows a lot. And so if we can begin to hold those narratives, that can actually more empower us to think about asking for help in a different way. So great questions, everyone. Yeah.
We got a really great question here. What steps can I take to rebuild my self-esteem and self-confidence after a job loss?
Happy to. When you start identifying what you want to do, getting in touch, and I know I say this a lot, the hard and soft skills, because it's so incredibly important. It gives you a perspective about yourself of, oh, I could do this, I could do that. And then when the targeting of the roles and the industries, and you're able to articulate it, I'm amazed to watch clients when we've gone through that process, once we have their resume done and they can see who they are, that confidence shoots up. And that's why I love doing the coaching thing. I get to be on their journey to watch how this exchanges. But you being able to talk about what you want, you're going to feel it. Even watching people's body language. I have clients, I could tell when they're leaning in, when they're talking about it, you can feel their passion about it. It will come out. It may take more time for some people than others, but it does happen. They can give you the clinical version of it.
Well, this is where I think this has become pretty trendy and has a lot of evidence. How are you affirming yourself? How are you finding strength? How are you finding your strengths in general? I said in one of the slides, our brain grows off of what we feed it. And so, yes, there may be things that like you're not good at or haven't worked out. And there's probably a lot that is pretty great about you. And how are you leaning into that and rewriting your narrative? The way we talk to ourselves greatly impacts the way we exist in the world. And again, another plug for therapy. I mean, this is very much a space where you are exploring, like, what is your narrative? How are you affirming yourself? And if you're having a lot of trouble with that, how do we figure that out?
And I just want to add one thing to this. I have clients all the time saying, I have a really hard time talking about myself. And the way I kind of reframe with clients is you are in this place where you're sharing just absolute facts about who you are. And most of the time people are asking, like in an interview, networking, whatever it may be, they're asking you questions and you're politely answering them. So that's where that exchange is. And when you start knowing who you are and that type of thing, you'll get comfortable with that. And it's hard for anybody. I mean, it takes practice, I think.
We have another question. And if anyone has more questions, feel free to get them all in, because I know we're a few minutes out of over time. But someone's saying, I'm sometimes afraid that being open on where I want to go in my career could close doors on other paths that I could potentially take, especially if the job opportunities are limited. Is this fear unnecessary?
Can you read it one more time?
Sure. I'm sometimes afraid that being open on where I want to go in my career would close doors on other paths that I could potentially take, especially if the job opportunities are limited. Is this fear unnecessary?
I don't think you have to limit yourself to one thing. And when I do work with clients and we identify, I know I keep repeating this, the roles, I don't have them limited to just one thing. There's 3 to 5 different roles, multiple different industries that you can look at. You don't have to settle on just one because you never know what can lead to the next opportunity and the growth opportunity. So I would say don't limit yourself. Get in touch and aligned with your core values, what your skills are, and I think you can move through that.
I think, oh,
Go ahead, Alysha.
also thinking about the fear as necessary or not, or what was the word that was used, Daniela? Is this fear?
If it's limiting, is the fear unnecessary? Yeah.
Unnecessary. Why is that the thought, right? And that's really where therapy can be supportive too, is what is behind that thought? What is behind that fear? What if it is limiting, right? Some of those questions that can help you move forward from the fear, as opposed to is it necessary or not, really understanding it and moving through it.
Yeah, Alysha, the question of, yeah, is it unnecessary or not? And um, I also want to just highlight that it could also be an exploration of, like, what is the priority right now? Do I need just any job, or do I need to make money right now? Like, do I need to get back, and can I revisit another path? And so, to Amy's point, maybe closing doors isn't the right move, but if you're really clear and you do have some time and space, exploring what those doors are, yeah, I think kind of checking out your priority as well could be helpful when that's coming up, that fear is coming up.
Looks like that's it for questions. If anyone wants to share another one, feel free. Um, I'll also be sharing, well, I think on the next slide we have email addresses. Yeah. Feel free to email Amy with any questions, and Ashley and Alysha. Their emails are their names at agoodplacetherapy.com with any questions there. But tomorrow I will be sharing the recording and the resources that were mentioned today, including this PowerPoint slide.